Okay, so today I wanted to ask you guys the age-old question of, do you prefer John Lennon or do you prefer Paul McCartney? So you could think about this in different ways. Who do you prefer as a songwriter? Who do you prefer as a singer? Who do you prefer overall if we're just talking about songs that they have written and just as an artist and their style? For me, the answer is Paul McCartney. And so I feel like a lot of people tend to go John Lennon for the most part. I feel like he kind of wins a little bit, but maybe it's just the circle that it's in. I think it's different if you ask people who are very into the Beatles music versus the general public. So the reason why I'm going Paul McCartney is his songs just always kind of spoke to me, and I remember being a kid and hearing Hey Jude, for example, and I even loved Oh Darling, which wasn't even a single, that was an album track, and that's one of the first songs that I even bought on iTunes. And I'm still wondering how I even found that song to begin with, but I really love that one. Let It Be is a great song, maybe a little bit overplayed, but I appreciate that one for what it is. And I think he has a lot of great stuff, even just with the Beatles. Michelle is an incredible record. I love the guitar on that as well. I Got a Feeling is like my favorite Beatles song, and that's half him and half John, but I really enjoy that song still. And the work on Sgt. Pepper's I really enjoyed. I also really like his granny songs, like Martha My Dear, Obladi Oblada. A lot of people don't care for stuff like that, but I've always enjoyed that. And I think that Paul McCartney writes a lot of great love songs. Obviously, his stuff with the Beatles, like And I Love Her, and his solo career, Calico Skies, and a bunch of other material. And I also really liked whenever he was talking more about social issues like Blackbird and talking about the civil rights movement there. Also on Despite Repeated Warnings, which he was basically taking shots at Trump on that song. A lot of times I think the beauty in McCartney is how simple that he can be. He has simple sentiments in a song that a lot of people can get with, and I think that he's super catchy. And I think that his music feels magical. He always has that right chord progression. I love his vocals particularly. I think that he has a lot of great things showcasing his vocal ability. Like Oh Darling, for example, that's showing rougher textures in his vocal ability, for example, but he can also give you a soft, sweet vocal in stuff like I Will, for example, and other stuff like I Follow the Sun, which is one of my favorite Paul McCartney songs. So I think I just connect with his music more. I think I like his material more when we're just talking about the Beatles in general, and especially in terms of comparing him to John Lennon. And now they did write a lot of songs together, so you have to kind of give them both respect in that. But I'm mainly talking about the ones that McCartney wrote by himself or the ones that he was like the main writer in terms of coming up with the idea and stuff like that. So I think that also has a part in it, at least for me. One of the knocks that I see towards him a lot is that some people feel like he didn't let people in as a songwriter. Like a lot of his stuff isn't inherently personal. He has examples of it in stuff like Let It Be, for example, and little songs like that, but a lot of his stuff is very general. His love songs is something that isn't personal. And so to me, it doesn't bother me because a great song is a great song. Like, of course, I love deep, insightful writers who can really share things about their life and have that moment of self-reflection. Like, I love Mariah Carey. Looking In is a great song. Petals, Can't Take That Away, and many other ones where she got very personal. But that's not really a requirement for me as long as I enjoy the music. That's really what matters. And John Lennon was definitely more personal as a songwriter. I'd say he had stuff like Jealous Guy, which is kind of talking about his insecurities and stuff like that. He had Woman, which I really liked. And he also did have some political stuff like Imagine, which I could appreciate. So he also spoke on politics sometimes, and he probably spoke on it more when he was alive than Paul McCartney did, to my recollection. John Lennon's also the same person that wrote Woman is the N-word of the world. Him and Yoko Ono, I don't know what they were thinking. I don't know why they put that out, but at best, it's racially insensitive. And so I don't really know what his thoughts there. So yeah, he was showing in a sense that, hey, I'm not perfect, but it could also be very problematic in some of the stuff that he was talking about sometimes. So I think we have to state that as well, because why would you put that song out? Like, he really thought he was doing something there. John Lennon had a lot of great Beatles compositions. Some of my favorites include If I Fell. I think that's just a gorgeous piece. I love the harmonies with Paul McCartney on there a lot. And then I also really enjoyed It's Only Love from the Help album. And then also whenever he did In My Life from Rubber Soul, I thought that was a beautiful introspective piece. Strawberry Fields Forever is certainly a favorite. Really enjoyed that one. I believe he was the main one behind Because on Abbey Road, and that's just a beautiful piece when we're talking about the harmonies as well. Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite is a really great song. I thought it was really interesting in terms of the instrumentation that he had on that record. on the White Album, Dear Prudence is certainly one that is underrated. So I think that he had a lot of great material in the Beatles, I will say that. And I think that's kind of why people like John Lennon a little bit more. And they probably just like his songs a little bit more in general. This is very much a preference argument. Another thing I really appreciate about Paul McCartney is that he was smart in the way that he utilized Linda in his music. You know, he had her do harmonies a lot on stuff and even got her involved in like instrumentation and all those things. And occasionally she would have a song here or a verse there, but it wasn't a thing where she was dominating his music overall and everything, or it's like every song that he wrote was about her and it just became too much. He knew how to utilize her tastefully. And that's one of the things that bothers me about John Lennon. It's like Yoko Ono just completely started dominating his music. I don't like anything that she does, and I just don't understand what the hype behind her is and everything. I think he's probably written a few great songs about her, but when she's taking up half of your album and just the way that it kind of changed him artistically, that's kind of like irritating to me. And it's just annoying to me too, because he's the main one. Oh, Paul McCartney wrote all these granny songs, and then when you got with her, you completely shifted and you basically did the same thing, and at least his songs were a lot better than yours. So I don't even get that argument. And so that's another thing that I have in favor of Paul McCartney. In terms of who was the better singer overall, I'm definitely giving it to Paul McCartney, just in terms of his versatility, the different genres that he can sing. And I think that he just had better tones overall in the Beatles. In solo, I think that his voice is just a lot better, honestly. John Lennon, it was good for what he did, but especially after his death, I find a lot of these publications like Rolling Stone and all of them are ranking him way too high, and he wasn't even the best singer in the Beatles. So I think we have to be realistic in that regard. Now, Paul McCartney definitely has, some albums that weren't really my favorite. Everybody knows that towards the end of the 80s, Paul McCartney was not really making great albums for the most part. He has some songs that I don't like, but most of the time, I like the stuff that he puts out. He has a lot of great albums, like Ram is one of my favorite Paul McCartney albums. Chaos and Creation in the Backyard is definitely a great later career album as well, one that I've always really appreciated. I really liked Egypt Station. That one is definitely underrated in the catalog. It doesn't get spoken about enough. Off the Ground was a great effort with songs like Hope of Deliverance, for example. So Paul definitely has stuff that I don't like solo and in the Beatles, and even some Wings stuff as well. But for the most part, I enjoy him. And also, I forgot to even talk about Wings and everything he did there. 1985, Let 'Em In is one of my favorite Wings songs. London Town, the song, I'm Caring. So he has that entire other discography to get into as well. John Lennon, I just feel like after the Beatles, he had a few songs that I really liked. I think he has one called like I Know. And I enjoy that one. Like I said, I enjoy Woman. There's probably like 5 or 10 songs I really liked from him after listening to his discography. But in general, I just love Paul more. And there was just something so fun, so whimsical about him. I just think there's a lot more upside to Paul McCartney as a songwriter. I think there were times in the Beatles where there would be a John Lennon song that would kind of rival one of his songs on the albums. And I think that they worked great as a group. But individually, I think Paul McCartney is better, always has been. And so I just think that some of the critiques that people have of him are kind of lazy, because some of them also directly apply to John Lennon. I can get both sides of the argument and everything, but for me, always a Paul McCartney fan, always will be. He has a lot of great stuff. He has a lot of versatility, in my opinion. And so that is my piece. Let me know what you guys think of this, and if you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe to the channel if you would like to see more. I also have a main channel, Anastasia25, link down below in the description. I'm also going to have all my social medias and things as well. Free Palestine.